to talk about the budget, and we have with us our Board of Finance colleagues and Board of Education colleagues who are also here tonight. Is just to discuss a presentation which Dr. Cook is going to be giving on the Board of Education recommended budget for the next fiscal year. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Cook to give a presentation, and then we can talk about it afterwards if there's questions. And then our board is going to have a further discussion about the town budget following this. We agreed at our last workshop, so we'll take a few minutes at the end of this to talk about the town budget. So with that, I will turn it over to you, and I think she's screen sharing for you, or I'm not sure what the deal is. Oh,
I have,
okay.
yes, so I have a clicker, and so
Okay, great.
Feel free to move wherever you want. I think this is a good spot, and I have my administrative team, my central office team here with me. If there's any questions that I can't answer, I certainly will turn it over to Stacy or anyone else from the team that we need to. So thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. As you all know, because of your budget process starts a little bit later than ours, but it's also a very long process that happens before we get to tonight. So our budget process typically starts in early September, where we start having discussions as a central office team. Stacy and Heather are running numbers for us and looking at different scenarios. We're getting numbers in and have negotiations going on. As you know, we had our teachers negotiations that went in this fall and didn't really get finalized till mid-November. And so there's a lot of work that goes into tonight's presentation and the numbers we're providing you. The major drivers are no different than you saw last year from us. You know, we want to share a little bit about recent achievements because our budget is really our financial.
Excuse me for 1 minute. Jeannie, so he's advancing slides, but it's not showing up on your end. So.
Thanks.
So she's screen sharing. Yeah, okay, you just might,
Sure.
indicate that you were
yes, Jeannie,
sharing it online, because people online wouldn't be really able to see this up here. So we got two things going at the same time.
Good.
Sorry to interrupt you.
I will, I'll signal to you, Jeannie. Yes. So our budget is really our plan, our strategic plan. And so we want to share a little bit about what the investments that the town has made in our school system and what that has led to recently. Want to talk about what the summary is, go through our major drivers, and then talk about our total budget. So I advanced the slide one. There you go. Thank you. So you've been part of these celebrations with us, so we always appreciate. We're not a huge town, and that our Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance are heavily involved in the successes of our schools and are right there with us in terms of celebrating our successes, from our recent announcement of the Blue Ribbon Award for Daniel Hand. Certainly our students do amazing work in both all the arts areas and on the athletic fields. And I know you're a big supporter of those events. I see many of you at a lot of those events. So it's great to have that support. And then, another measure is niche marketing. We look at where we land in those comparisons, and Daniel Hand and the district are typically 1 or 2 in New Haven County, and very, very much up there in any ratings that come out on the state level as well. We have a school district and the district and town should be very proud of. And then, as you know, we typically have schools that are schools of distinction. So, a year ago, all 5 schools were a school of distinction. That was the first time ever in the state. And so we have a wonderful school district, pre-K through 12, that our families and students enjoy. And we have just a tremendous staff that lead us to those results. And there you go. We also have a lot of major changes coming forward, and a lot of work that has gone on to get us to this point. Neck River is taking shape. I believe they're going to turn on power to it on Friday, which is really exciting. That's a major milestone. And we are on budget and on time. And so what that means is we should be looking at, yes, thank you. We should be looking at getting the key sometime in June, that we would be able to really give you a tour of that and celebrate that opening, but not to be forgotten as well as the amount of work that's gone into Brown School, converting that school to from a 4 to 5 school to a pre-K to 5 school that we will be using every square inch. You know, there was some, we knew when we were looking at going into the reorg that we had some free space in Brown School, and that will not be the case, you know, next year. It'll be well utilized. So as we go from 6 sites to 4 in a year from now. The budget, and we'll show you some comparisons of where this lands. You know, we came out to 3.04% when you take off the debt service of 0.58%. You're looking at 2.46%. Either one of those numbers lands us well among the lowest in the state. And we'll show you our district reference group in a little bit. But you know, we look through every line item as we go through this. We work very hard. It was a year we know we have debt coming on for the new school building, and so that is not lost on myself or our staff. And so when we started the budget discussions, it was really, if you need something else, you're going to have to eliminate something to get to that. This was you know, a time that the town is putting unprecedented investments in our schools. We recognize that, and I think we've been very mindful of that, and that this is only a, you know, a piece of the whole town budget. It's the biggest piece. But it is only a piece of the town budget, so we want to be mindful of where that lands and the impact of that has. Speaking of major investments, it was time, and the Board of Ed really looked at our teachers contract and made the biggest investment in our teachers, you know, I think in a long time, probably since the late 80s, in terms of you know, increase that we needed to do. You know, our teachers are our biggest asset in our district, and the major reasons why we return the results that we do. And so we needed to make an investment in our teachers. We're very proud, and the board was a leader in this in the state, recognizing a teacher shortage and concerns, and we had our own retention concerns. And so this is going to go a major way in terms of you know, addressing those issues. So we're excited, and you know, our teachers are excited and appreciative of that as well. Another account that is rising is substitute coverage. You know, with minimum wage going up, with the lack of substitutes available, we needed to increase this funding. And then we basically, as I shared, we had kind of a flat staffing profile for going into next year. We reduced 4 FTEs as part of the reorg, and then we had an additional 4 FTEs needed, as long as assistant principal for the next year. Health insurance. So working in conjunction with the town for self-insurance. This was somewhat of a surprise to us, a positive surprise. We don't often get those when we're doing budgeting, but we did get a, Jeannie, if you could advance the slide one. 2, thank you.
One more.
Yes. This was great news. If you remember last year, we had about a $700,000 increase in health insurance. So to have a $120,000 increase was very welcomed. It's you know, major reasons you look at our percentage, we'd be at least 1% or more higher if we had the typical health insurance return. Many districts are dealing with 10 to 15%, you know, much, you know, about double what we even saw last year. So we are very fortunate in that area. This comes from several things. So decreased headcount over the years. It's, you know, so as we reduce staff, you know, I think that has an impact in this area. We've negotiated contracts that provide insurance savings and cost containment, and a lot of work on that, and the work with the town, certainly being self-insured, allows us to be in a good spot. Transportation, we have one of the lowest increases in transportation in the state. As I talked to colleagues, we are in year 4 of a 5-year contract. We have a wonderful transportation provider, a great relationship with them, and we have a 2.5%. Most districts are seeing somewhere in the range of 4 to 4.5% as they see increased costs on their end. You know, eventually this number will go up. You know, we're not naive to that. but we are enjoying, a very good contract for the board. And, as I mentioned, we're year 4 of a 5-year cycle for that for transportation. Public and private placements. This is, Jeannie, if you can advance the next slide. This is kind of the detail on that. So we have had students age out. As you're aware, we're responsible for some special education students till they turn 22. We've had a large group turn 22, and then also some other outplacement that are no longer going to continue. We also work very hard to keep our students in Madison. Wherever we can, we want to program locally. And whether that's locally within the school district, that's our first goal, but then oftentimes too, we're keeping students as close to Madison as possible, working with other area districts, working with other area districts on transportation to outplacements. And so that is something that's favored by our families and certainly our staff as well. We're always looking to, provide the best services to our students at the cost that is the lowest. And as I said, keeping them as close to Madison as possible. In terms of operating budget, so this is probably the hardest year that we had going through this budget in a while. We had a huge increase in electricity. We have a new building coming on board that is geothermal, but will not have solar panels as we open, and won't have solar panels during this budget year. So that's a piece of that. You see Neck River. That is a really strong estimate that we're getting right from Eversource in our work with them. But then we have 3 buildings that we will be basically mothballing until January 1st. So we've worked with the town again. The town will assume control of those buildings on January 1st of 2026. And so that's been budgeted on our side for half the year. So we'll have to do some work on that, but obviously there's some savings in those buildings that are obviously older, older windows, older systems. And so we'll see some fund savings on that, as well as some maintenance savings in those buildings. So lots of conversations still to happen, in the what will happen with TCLC, Ryerson, and Jeffrey, but we have that placed in the budget as under our control from January 1. In terms of operating budget, again, the direction here was to achieve savings where we could, but then also not to make major changes. We've had teachers pilot a reading program. You heard from us last year about the Right to Read Act and our work with the state on that. We are moving closer. This will not bring us in full compliance, but we have piloted a reading program that is would be supplementing what we already have. And so that would be instituted for next year. We had accreditation for the high school. I'm proud to report that we had a very strong accreditation report. I don't think that's any surprise, but it was really great to see a strong accreditation report. So that will be presented to the board. We just received that a couple of weeks ago. And that's an extensive process to go through, as well as some savings through the configuration process. And so we have some contractual increases that are pretty typical there for technology and other areas. Next slide, Gene. Yes. Debt service. So we should also be happy and celebrate that Daniel Hand is paid off at the end of this year. Just really great timing when you think about it. A new building coming on board, and in our for us, our newest building right now is paid off after 20 years. So that's phenomenal. So we won't have that debt increase that we've enjoyed the last few years, or decrease that we've enjoyed the last few years. So this is the last of that piece, but we should be very happy to have paid that off. In terms of our total budget, and then the drivers there, as I've mentioned, personnel and benefits always going to be the biggest driver for us, the biggest increase, 2.47%. Health insurance, very low than what we expected, 0.19%. Other items, 0.28%. Special ed being flat. That's again I have lots of other districts calling me, asking what's going on with special ed, how we're able to do that, because they are seeing, you pick up the paper or read some of the local education stories, they're seeing that, 10 to 15% increases in their budget. That may be us next year. And so I always, want to give you that caution. We're doing a lot of work, but so are these other districts as well. I think we've got some great ideas, but certainly there are other ideas, that other districts have as well. So we're thrilled with that area. Facilities, this was a year that we were just keeping everything going forward. We could see a drop, and we expect to see a drop a year from now with electricity. If we were looking at putting those solar panels on Neck River, that could be, we hope, the first net zero elementary school in the state. If we were able to put the solar panels on that, so that's very exciting and would save us about $200,000 going forward. And then you see the debt service for the last year of that. In comparison to where we stand with other districts. So if you see an italicized district in number here, that means it's still at the superintendent level. If you see, the non-italicized, that means the board has approved that. So you see about most of them have been approved by the board. We're the lowest in our district reference group. We're the lowest in the shoreline of the districts that I've spoken to as well. So we're really working hard to keep that number at a reasonable place, but not making major reductions. This was the year that we really presented a status quo budget to the board, and that's what we brought for you tonight. It's just keeping what we have and moving forward, and then we'll see where we're at with our building footprint, and still have obviously tremendous opportunities for our students and course offerings and things like that. We've been very, very fortunate. And then just our last slide, just to cover where we have been and show you again. It's a 3.04 when you do not consider the debt. It's a impact at 2.46 when you do consider the debt. And you want to thank everybody that's got us to this point. I want to thank the Board of Ed for their support in this process. We start with the Board of Ed again in October, talking to them, but our staff internally in September. And this represents work that happens at the building level down to the teacher and para level, where those conversations are happening to see what we need. So the music department has a conversation in terms of what they need. At the teacher level, the art departments, the social studies department. So there was a lot of work to get into this, to this point. This is a major milestone for us, and so we appreciate your time tonight. And as I mentioned, here to answer any questions and share our next steps.
Thank you for that. Congratulations again too on just all the accolades that the school district is receiving, as well as the high school. So
Thank you.
as a parent, 2 kids in the system, I know it's a great school district, and so we're lucky to have the leadership team in place. I want to thank you for all that. And also highlight, I think this was a very modest budget. I know you're still always making really tough decisions on a day-to-day basis about how to spend money. Appreciate the thoughtfulness in this. I do, if I may ask, just special education, I do hear a lot about what's going on. I still get confused about the, ECS versus, how is special education being handled now with the funding? And I know it's a big conversation at Hartford, because we don't get fully reimbursed, right? We only get a portion of it. What's any risk factor we might have with what's going on in Hartford this year with special ed?
We basically have budgeted what we received this year. So we're not anticipating, major savings from additional money that the governor is intending to put into the educational cost share reimbursement. And so we're looking at basically flat. What that is, and then the town receives this, is that it's reimbursement for a high-cost student. So a student that costs more than 4.5 times our average student spend is there's some reimbursement. And what has happened to that recently is towns like Madison, that the state considers on the wealthier side, they have an even a larger decrease than us. So even though the intent was originally to reimburse for all students beyond 4.5%, they never reached that amount. And so they're looking at, about 68% to 70% of the reimbursement coming to Madison for that amount. And I think that would hold true even with the additional 40 million that the governor is planning to put
And
forward.
we're budgeting for the 60 to 70% kind of reimbursement? Okay.
Yeah.
So that, but you're not concerned then that there might be a change?
I think it's going to be about what we
Yeah.
normally
Okay.
receive, so there wouldn't be an impact. And we do know the educational cost sharing grant, so that, that's a different grant. That's for general Board of Ed budget. That's about the same. So the town made a smart move, a few years ago, a number of years ago now, I believe it was about 10, that they do not rely on that funding each year, because that, it's also volatile, and I believe it's going down about $10,000 for next year.
Thank you. We're up to board questions. I'm just wondering, can we go online first if that's okay, since it's probably better, I always feel like they get the tail end of this, so let's place online, and then we can.
Hi guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. I just have a quick question in regards to busing. Are we anticipating any changes with busing with the new school configuration in terms of reduction in the number of buses? And is that accounted for yet in this budget, if so?
So, great question. We are not anticipating any savings at this point. We pay for, it's a function of how many buses we utilize. And ours is a difficult town to transport because of the kind of the makeup, the physical geography of the town. And although we are really going, it becomes a little less complicated next year, because what we do is we use all our buses typically for the high school and the elementary, and then we split them for Polson and Brown right now, because Polson and Brown start very similar times. We will still have those 3 tiers next year, and so we'll have all of our buses used for the high school, Polson, and then elementary. So that's what we're looking at now. We still have the same number of square miles to cover, the same number of students, and so we're not anticipating any savings in terms of transportation for next year. We hope to maybe save some on fuel, and then also potentially in the future in terms of time. But the big function is how many bus drivers do we need, how many buses we need, and we feel we're going to need the same. We actually have a pretty quick turnaround for elementary next year, because elementary will start, our pre-K to 5 will start a little bit earlier than it does now. 8:35 is our target time. And right now, elementary starts 8:50.
Okay, great. Thank you.
John Rasmus, your hand is raised as well.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. First of all, thank you, Dr. Cook, for that very thorough presentation, and I appreciate your comments at the onset, realizing that that the town's going to be taking on some debt, some significant debt fairly soon. I thought I had this figure before. I believe our student count is 2,450 for 24-25. I take it that's an average. And for 25-26, we're projecting
About the same. Yeah, so we're going through high school enrollment. We have had great interest from 8th graders coming back from other placements or tuition into the district, but we're about the same. We had a lower kindergarten with the new rule, but we've been enrolling or receiving a lot of interest in kindergarten, so we expect kindergarten to jump back up.
okay, and same number of out-of-town students, which we don't recover full costs, correct? Approximately.
So out-of-town students, we do. It may be lagging the tuition based on what the state publicizes about a year or two. But if a student tuitions into to Madison, they're paying about $21,000. It's Yes, it's based on the most recent rate published by the state.
Okay. And last question, you presented some savings for closing the schools. That was just utility costs, or I'm just wondering, we're switching over now to this new, I guess I'll say facility, number of schools that we have. Uh, any other savings that were realized through administrative, custodial? I guess the real underlying question is, if nothing had changed, would this be a 4% increase budget, 5%? I'm just wondering how much we're saving from the new facilities.
Yes,
Obviously,
yep.
go ahead. Go ahead.
The savings some of the savings we have is based on maintenance of 37,000. So we took that off the lines from TCLC, Ryerson, and Jeffrey. In terms of custodians, we're going to be cleaning more square feet next year because of the additional space at Brown that will be used in the larger school coming on board. So that the custodians pretty much stayed the same, and I would anticipate, if we were not in the position of opening a new building, we would need increased maintenance costs. So we just had another leak at Jeffrey Roof that we were working on. That would have been something that we would have needed to address, in a major way, and some issues at Ryerson that we've dealt with recently. So yeah, I think we'd be, in the 4% range with additional maintenance costs and certainly additional capital improvement costs as well.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. And again, as Peggy mentioned, kudos to you for the Blue Ribbon Award and all the other good work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members attending online? Nope, okay, great, we'll go here and Matt.
Well, thank you very much, and the board as well too. Thank you. You do the comparison to the GRGB. You're showing the percent change increase, and how we are low. This is fantastic. But do you have an analysis of the cost per student in this GRGB? Because this is percent change. I'm very interested in how much are we spending per student versus these other schools.
I don't have that, offhand. I do know we're pretty comparable. We have been, I think higher, but we've had low increases for the last, I would say 6-7 years. We have a slide we use with the Board of Ed that illustrates that, so I can get that information to you.
Thank you.
In terms of where we've stood in the recent increases, but yeah, the towns now oftentimes say a bigger school district will have a lower cost because of just economies of scale is oftentimes what we see. So sometimes it's hard to make those comparisons, but we with our increases recently, we've certainly come back a little bit from where we were before.
The second question, unrelated, you had mentioned too, when you were talking about taking the schools, the three schools offline, that there's some more conversations that need to happen. Can you elaborate on what those conversations are? Will we be able to take the schools offline and transfer back to the town on January 1st?
Yeah, so we feel very confident that the discussions to get to that point were basically we know we're going to be in and out of those schools with the furniture that we have in there, with some technology. Our main focus is going to be, being ready for day one of school next year. And so we didn't want to be pressed with kind of, it's kind of like when you're moving your house, you have to clean the old house and get out and then start opening up the new house so you can have a place to live. We knew with everything how complicated it is. We wanted to focus on where we were going to live and take some time still to get everything out. And so we knew we would not be. So we were appreciative of the work with the town. But we feel very confident that by January 1 of 2026, we'll be able to go through all the procedures to get rid of any furniture. Certainly the town will be offered any technology or furniture that we don't need at that point. We'll have a really good handle because we'll be having school in operation what we need. We need more desks to come over or use some of the old furniture, we'd be able to do that. But I think we'll be in a great shape by January to make those decisions. And then, we would certainly want to have the conversation. The board's been having those conversations. The board took a vote to indicate that January 1 was, acceptable. And then we would turn the keys over to the town, and it's, not our decision, but we want to certainly have, be part of those conversations. Ryerston's the neighbor to Brown, and so, we would like to be part of any conversation, whatever happens to that site. Jeffrey is, a neighbor to Polson in hand, so I think that that's a part of it. And then TCLC, I think that, again, we're want to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think the school renewal plan had funds still put in there for like raising it and those types of things, so we should be able to.
That would be for Ryerson. I know there's some funding, but certainly they want to concentrate on the new building at this point. And yeah, that's a decision that's not necessarily
correct.
My purpose.
Thanks.
Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I just wanted to dig in a little bit more about the utilities page.
Sure.
So you've got the reduction of the 3 facilities, it's a $211,000 savings. Is that just electric? Or is that the heating and, all in utilities?
In terms of Peter, I believe it's all in.
That's
Other
everything.
than
We reduce it down to a minimal amount we're not taking the buildings completely offline. They're gonna be heated to 50, 55 degrees. And there'll be 1 or 2 lights on in the building, of course, perimeter lighting for security, but that's it. So that's the number we came up with to accommodate those buildings until.
I guess what I'm struck by is we're taking 3 facilities essentially offline to save 211. The new building is coming in at almost the same as those 3 combined.
it is pretty close to the same size of those 3 buildings. And one thing to understand too is that does not, because it's geothermal, it is a more typical electrical cost because of that, because you're running those systems on that. Not my total area of expertise. If I'm missing anything on that, but
So,
that's
yeah,
what
the new building is almost 1 for 1 square footage is equals what we had for the other 3 buildings. Their estimates for electrical that was worked out with the engineers was a little low, and we added to the 18% because it's all electrical. There's no fossil fuels in there at all. That number is going to be, I'm sure, adjusted for next year because we also plan in there for a lot of testing that's going to happen in the building for the first year. There's going to be the building's got to be dialed in. It's going to take a year.
So the 18% is not district-wide increases?
Oh, it's district wide.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes,
So the 112 represents 18% of the district.
that's correct.
Less the Neck River, which would probably have that built into it, right?
That's correct. Yes.
I have 2 questions and actually a comment, but what about the solar panel?
So the plan is, and again, I'll ask Pete to jump in if I miss anything. The recommendation is not to do anything additional to a building for its first year because you're under a warranty for that first year. So let the roof settle, let all those things happen. If it is added, then at that point, our preference would be to purchase the solar panels, not do a purchase agreement. And then that would reduce that by about $200,000 for the additional cost for a year. It would be net zero.
Sounds right.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that. We're really excited about that possibility. The board is really excited about that possibility, but I think that it makes good sense to follow the construction.
Yeah,
That's recommendation.
I'm sorry, I just want to, we're ready for the panels. All the conduit, the roof has been laid accordingly, so it's ready.
You're ready to go. We're just waiting.
Ready for the,
Yeah.
So a couple of just comments, really. Dr. Cook, great presentation. Congratulations on all the achievements and the accolades. When you mentioned earlier that you knew there was a lot of debt service coming on and you sat down and worked with your team, assessor and the board, we really do appreciate that. So that's, I just want to say that. So you knew it was, obviously have a little bit of debt service coming off this year and that will be it, but, going forward, the town will be, debt service be increasing significantly. And you mentioned that, you said how you sat down and realized that and worked together. So, thank you. The question I have is, just I think I saw this before. What's your projected enrollment going over the next 10 years? I believe I saw that once before. You have
Yeah,
did you get that?
So we get two different types of projections. We get a NESDEC projection every year that the board is a member of NESDEC, so we receive that. So I can send that out to you. And then we receive, when we needed it, we pay for a demographer to come in. So we haven't done that recently because the previous projections have been pretty spot on, in terms of what we see. So we feel we're at the bottom at this point. And then we'll start to see increases over the next few years. And so, we're excited about that. We're hoping that more of the increases from the projections, though, hit more middle school and high school. And so we have room in those areas, more room. And so we will be, pretty full at the pre-K to 5 level. So we feel that we'd be, we're in good shape, but we'd like to see more of the projections tilt towards those areas.
And the reason I bring that up is because, everybody, when you close buildings, sometimes everybody thinks you can eliminate some teachers or the 5th grade leaves. That's not how it works. It's usually just a couple here, a couple there.
Yeah.
So hopefully as the enrollment increases, hopefully it happens similar. So I'm just curious about that. And the fact that with or without the deficit, the debt service, the budget went up 3%, considering where inflation is and everything else. And I knew we had some contract negotiations. I think it just really worked well. So
Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Yes, Tom?
Very nice presentation. Thank you. I'm new to the Board of Finance, John Miller, so please forgive me if my question reflects a great deal of naivete. I was wondering, I've noticed on the state websites that there's a fairly significant difference in aid provided to Guilford, which is in the same district reference as we are, and our aid. Can you speak to that as to why that discrepancy exists?
I think it's certainly, that's a district and budget we follow closely in terms of, for everything, for academic results, for any of our financial pieces. I think their average income is lower than ours, so I know that that's a piece of it. They have more students that hit, that free and reduced lunch marker that the state puts out. And so part of that is, and this is federal funding, not state funding, but we, for the first time this year, dipped below Title I funding. So we lost $100,000 in this current budget year. We believe that will potentially come back, but as we know with where federal funding is, we didn't feel it'd be prudent to necessarily anticipate that funding coming back next year, because it's a function of many things going on right now. Not only the number of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, which we can't get an answer on what number that would be for the federal funding, but also the federal discussions in terms of reducing potential aid. But I think that's a piece of it, is kind of the wealth marker. We receive less reimbursement in our building projects or roof replacements than Guilford. So I think that's also an indication, I think, of where they see Madison versus Guilford in terms of that wealth marker.
Short of all of us taking a cut in income to get us into lower income level, is there anything that Madison can do?
We are volunteering.
Yes.
Is there anything Madison can do to try to broach that a little bit more?
I think what we've done is advocate. There's aggressive, certainly town and board work to get grants. So we worked very hard on the building project to get the reimbursement at we were one of the only districts to ever receive this. We received it based on a renovate as new project, because we were able to prove to the state that would have been more expensive. So we were able to prove to the state through a lot of work through the facilities department to say renovating Ryerson and Jeffrey would have been more expensive than building a new building. So we went from 18% to 28%. You know, I think that we work well with our local politicians at the state level to say, you know, please protect our funding, please work on that. So they protected as much as possible that educational cost sharing grant, that $360,000 or so. Because other times that was supposed to get cut completely. They've protected that as much as they can, I feel like. So I think that's the work, is just the grant, you know, work, and making sure that we're you know, advocating to the state to fund us as much as possible, because we recognize, you know, the vast majority obviously is on the backs of homeowners in the town.
Into the right to read thing that you guys have been advocating for, because it would have cost the district a lot more money to buy the curriculum,
Yeah,
all of those
right.
things.
Yeah, we still feel like if we were to go down that path, it'd be at least another $300,000 to $400,000 for something that is not as good as we have right now. And we've worked with our teachers, you know, that's not just our administrators, certainly Gail feels that way, in her work, you know, on that every day. But we showed our teachers what the state was wanting us to buy, and they did not feel that was the right way to go. Universally, it wasn't just like, you know, a 51% vote of the teachers. It was universally, they felt like what we have now was better. And the results show that, you know, and I think that they couldn't show us that the results would be better. So, yeah, so I think that's, you know, it's an interesting question. We talk about that a lot. You know, Stacy works with other, you know, has conversations with other business managers about that as well. And, yeah, I think we're doing as much as we can in that area.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to clarify my own math. I looked at your 25-26 approved budget for 65.2 million, and the number of students projected are actually, they're listed as actual 24 to 44. So that means that the average cost per student is 26,683. Is that a round number, approximately correct?
So what the state does is they have a formula, so it is lower than that, but it's based on a formula that they use to calculate that. It's not as simple, because you have to compare us to other towns. So we're one of the rare districts that have debt on our side. You know, from a building project, usually that's on the town side. But there's you know, other in-kind services that the town gives us that are factored into that. So
If I understand what you're saying, probably the state basically factors out debt service in those.
Yeah, for certain
one-off.
ones.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Would it be fair, I remember back to my days, that normalizing that number net of special ed, because special ed plays such a big and variable role in the budget that, you know, just amortizing that across the entire student body really doesn't represent what's being spent on. I think what most of us think about when we say, what is the cost per student? And so a number that breaks that expense out and treats it as its own line is probably a fairer way to think about cost per student expenses.
The state does not do that, but I can see why you're asking that, because I think that, you know, parents would want to think about, or the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen want to think about, like, student coming into the high school, what does that cost? You know, what does it cost to educate, you know, another student? And so I always give the example of, if you give me a student tomorrow, my cost for that additional student coming into the high school as a ninth grader for a year is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000. It's when you have to add another teacher. So, you know, if we have 15 more third graders move in over the summer and we have to add another teacher, then that cost is
Steps.
Yes, it does not, yeah, it's not a smooth, you know, economic formula that goes up. It really is those steps. And so that's where it becomes difficult to really calculate that. But we go off of what's on the state website in terms of the costs, and they're usually a couple of years behind.
The reason I say that is because we have an extraordinarily good special ed program and historically have, and that can have the net effect of attracting families to town, which then increases the cost So in a sense, we're penalized for our excellence on that front financially.
I would
Thank you,
argue.
Liz.
I would argue everybody's to blame for that. Gail's to blame for that as well, as Liz. And that we have families that move to town just for the education system. I think that, and some of the beach people might argue with me, that I think it's the number one reason why people move to town is the educational system. I'm being biased on that. And that's, that's throughout, and I think you're right, it is consistent with special ed, but the high-cost special ed placements are consistent, in any district. So if a family's not moving to Madison for that, they're moving for the special ed services in the district. Because if you're on an outplacement agreement with any district, you can move to any district in Connecticut, they're gonna basically start there, they're gonna pick that contract up.
But
I just want to be mindful of time because we do have only 10 minutes and we're supposed to talk about the budget.
but we don't get the same amount of money as another town in
reimbursements.
Reimbursement.
No, that's a good point, yes, yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Craig. Nice job. Very nice job.
Also,
Thank you, yes.
Thanks,
for your time.
and also, obviously from, Board of Finance members, if there's more questions, you'll have an opportunity during your workshop to dig into this. I know, we had our board had our budget workshop and kind of resolved where we were on the town budget. And had talked about maybe just taking action tonight to approve a recommended budget. So, yeah, you can take a break and then we have. So, basically, if Stacy's just gonna hand out, we kind of agreed on what changes we were gonna make. And she came up with a new spreadsheet adding the, I think it was $18,672 into the first selectmen's recommended budget that had been presented in our workshop. Jen, are you able to, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Okay, so Stacy's just handing out a sheet. I don't know if you want to email this to her, but basically it just adds in, it shows the numbers adding in the additional $18,672 that we talked about at our last workshop.
Okay.
So it's just those, we kind of agreed to that list and that's consistent with what I have from my notes from last week. I had rounded it to 18,300. She's very precise. So I guess the question is, trying to remember, I think we can basically do we still need to vote on this at our meeting, our formal meeting, Stacy, or do we just?
We've always done it at a workshop.
We've always done it at a workshop. Okay. So I guess I would like to make a motion to approve a recommended Board of Selectmen town budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, totaling $35,353,928.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great.
Nice,
And-
Jen.
And obviously, just that is broken down between a $27,242,600 operational budget, and then a capital budget of $111,329. Any other further discussion? Because I know we went through this. Do you have more further discussion on this? Yeah.
More of a clarifier.
Yep.
In our last workshop, I expressed some questions about some of the capital projects. I think overall, the budget is fine. I think it's a very plausible budget. I don't think it's extreme in any way.
I don't think we've ever had one page for additional budget.
But, I do have reservations about some of the individual projects, and so I don't want an affirmative vote for this budget to be taken as just a blanket approval of everything. In other words, I don't want, for the purposes of our discussions down the road, to, sort of give up my right to say, well, I still think we need to really revisit this project and challenge it on the list. So,
beyond the next fiscal year, because we're recommending the spending, the capital spend for this next fiscal year.
Kind of do get sort of locked in a little bit.
Right.
We don't have to
Right.
spend it, I guess. We
Right,
could
but
decide
there
to
are
cancel
years
the
2
project.
through 5.
2 through
Correct,
5.
correct. Yes.
So you're talking about the 5-year plan versus the actual budget that's being submitted.
Yes.
Right.
Right, and that's what we
I-
talked about.
I agree.
And just to, for people attending, we had a long conversation about trying to spend more time earlier in the CIP process so that it's not kind of coming at the end of the CIP process. What did I say, CIP? So, and that's something we're gonna have to work through, but, I hear what you're saying. This is just for the next fiscal year capital budget. So having any other questions, Jen? Al,
No questions from me.
Great, all right, well, all in favor, say aye. Aye, so
Aye.
vote is unanimous to move forward the town of Madison budget, recommended budget, and so that will go to the Board of Finance. We'll have a public hearing presenting this budget. I think I don't remember the date, it's when's the public hearing?
February 25th.
February 25th? Okay, great. So there'll be an opportunity for people to see the full details of the budget and then ask questions and things like that. And then we'll move on to the Board of Finance. So, and then I guess the next question is, technically, we don't really have any say over the school budget. I think last year we still did a recommendation. Do we want to do that? I mean, we don't have any, I think we're comfortable moving it forward in the process. So I think that's what we're voting. So I guess I would make a motion to recommend the Board of Education budget as presented for further review by the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Okay,
We don't have to do anything. We have to do
okay,
it?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we had this covered as possible action. So, all right, great. So let's move forward in the process. It's in your hands, Board of Finance hands. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And now we got another meeting starting in a few minutes. So, all right, thanks a lot. And I guess, Jeannie, are you going to log off for this meeting and then re-log on for the town meeting, or you just keep it on? Sure.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
She's probably coming in.
I'm logging off and logging back on.
Okay.
Since we need